In the division of assets, my late husband left me 3 stores worth $3 million. $3 million. Can you believe it? After 50 years of marriage, after having supported him in every decision, in every business venture, in every difficult moment, Robert finally recognized my worth. But my happiness lasted exactly 40 minutes. Because after that meeting with the lawyer, Julian, my daughter Brenda arrived with my son-in-law Kyle, and what happened next broke my soul. Kyle walked into that office as if he owned the world, with that arrogant smirk that always gave me a bad feeling, and demanded that we manage the stores together, as a family. I looked him directly in the eye and said, "No way, I am the owner now." And then my son-in-law, that man who ate at my table every Sunday, who slept under my roof, spat the cruelest words I have ever heard in my life. "Then pack your bags and get out of our house." Our house. As if I were an intruder. As if those 43 years living there meant nothing. In that instant, the lawyer, Julian, let out a strange, almost diabolical little laugh. And what he revealed next made Kyle turn completely pale. But wait, because for you to understand the magnitude of what happened, I need to tell you the whole story from the beginning. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're from in the comments. I'm Barbara. I'm 71 years old, and for 5 decades, I was the perfect wife, the invisible wife. The woman who gets up at 5 in the morning to make breakfast, who irons the shirts until they are impeccable, who cleans every corner of the house as if it were a sacred temple. I met Robert when I was just 20 years old. He worked at a hardware store downtown, and I was a cashier at a neighborhood grocery store. Robert was a man with calloused hands, giant dreams, and an ambition that shined in his brown eyes. I fell in love with that ambition. I fell in love with his promises of building an empire together, of giving us a better life, of growing old surrounded by abundance and love. We got married 6 months later in a simple ceremony. I wore an ivory dress that my mother had embroidered for weeks, and Robert wore the only suit he owned, inherited from his father. We vowed to love each other in richness and in poverty, in sickness and in health, and I fulfilled that vow until the last day of his life. The first years were hard. We lived in a tiny apartment where our bed and a folding table barely fit. Robert worked 16-hour days dreaming of opening his own business, and I worked double shifts at the grocery store to help him save every possible cent. When Brenda was born, I left my job. Robert insisted that a mother should be at home taking care of her daughter, and I obeyed without question. Brenda was my world for years. The apple of my eye, my reason for existing. I gave her everything I never had. New clothes, toys, piano lessons, birthday parties with clowns and enormous cakes. Robert began to prosper. He opened his first appliance store when Brenda was 5 years old, and I was so proud of him. But as Robert built his empire, I became his shadow. I stopped having my own name. I was Robert's wife or Brenda's mom. I stopped having my own dreams. My days were reduced to cooking, cleaning, ironing, serving. Robert came home late every night, exhausted, and I would massage his feet while he told me about his business deals. He never asked how my day had been. He never asked if I was tired, too. He never asked if I had dreams beyond those 4 walls. Brenda grew up spoiled, terribly spoiled. Every whim was a command. If she wanted a pink dress, she got it. If she wanted a car at 18, she got it. Robert adored her with a blind devotion, and I did too. Maybe that was our mistake. We gave her so much that she never learned to value anything. She never had to fight for anything. She never had to sacrifice for anyone. When she turned 25, she met Kyle at a party. Kyle was a used car salesman, a guy with an easy smile and syrupy words. I disliked him from the first moment. There was something in his eyes I didn't trust, something calculating, something cold beneath all that fake charm. I told Robert, "I don't like that man for our daughter." Robert laughed. He told me I was exaggerating, that Kyle was a good, hard-working guy, that Brenda was in love, and that was all that mattered. They got married 8 months later in a wedding that cost more than $50,000. I myself embroidered the tablecloth for the main table and prepared some of the food with my own hands. Kyle moved into our house temporarily while they saved up for their own place. That temporarily turned into 11 years. 11 years living under my roof. 11 years eating my food. 11 years where I kept cleaning, cooking, serving, while Kyle sat in the recliner in my living room like he was a king. And the worst part is that Brenda changed. My sweet girl became a stranger. She started talking to me with contempt, as if I were her servant and not her mother. If the food wasn't ready on time, she yelled. If her clothes weren't ironed perfectly, she complained. Kyle had poisoned her against me, turned her into a female version of himself. Ambitious, cold, cruel. Robert didn't notice anything. Or maybe he didn't want to notice. He was too busy with his businesses. By then he already had 3 stores and was making more money than we had ever dreamed of. He bought expensive jewelry for Brenda, gave Kyle money for his projects, but he gave me just enough for groceries. When I asked for something for myself, he told me not to be frivolous, that I already had everything I needed. 6 months ago, Robert started to get sick. First, it was dizzy spells, then chest pains, then he couldn't breathe well. The doctors said his heart was failing. I took care of him day and night. I gave him his medicine, bathed him when he could no longer do it himself, cooked him special broths, and slept in a chair next to his bed to be alert for anything he might need. Brenda and Kyle would show up once a week for 10 minutes and then run off with any excuse. In his last days, Robert changed. He became softer, more grateful. He would take my hand and tell me I had been his pillar, his strength, his everything. He asked me for forgiveness for having made me invisible for so many years. He cried in my arms like a child. He told me he had made important decisions to secure my future, that I would never have to depend on anyone again, that I was finally going to receive everything I deserved. I didn't understand what he meant until the day of his funeral. The funeral was a circus. Brenda cried dramatically, clinging to Kyle, as if she truly felt the death of her father. Kyle greeted everyone with the face of a chief mourner, as if he had been the husband and not me. I was exhausted, broken, empty. I had lost my partner of 50 years. And while everyone ate and drank at the wake, I just wanted to disappear. 3 days later, the summons from the lawyer, Julian, arrived for the reading of the will, and that's when the real nightmare began. Julian's office was on the 12th floor of a downtown building, an elegant office with dark wood furniture and expensive paintings on the walls. I arrived half an hour early, nervous, not knowing what to expect. Robert had never talked to me about his legal affairs. He had never included me in his financial decisions. I signed where he told me to sign, nodded when he told me to nod, and that was it. It had been that way for 50 years. Julian was a man in his 50s, with small glasses and a kind smile. He offered me coffee and asked how I was handling the loss. I told him it was terrible, that I couldn't sleep, that the house felt empty without Robert. He nodded with understanding and told me we would wait for the other heirs to arrive. I froze. The other heirs? Was Brenda in the will too? Of course she was, I thought. She was his only daughter. Robert would never leave her out. Brenda and Kyle arrived 20 minutes late. She was wearing a tight black suit and dark sunglasses, as if she were a movie star in mourning. Kyle wore a gray suit that probably cost more than I spent on groceries in 3 months. They walked in without even greeting me. Brenda sat as far away from me as possible, and Kyle settled in next to her with that arrogant posture I despised so much. Julian cleared his throat and opened a thick folder full of documents. He began to read in a clear, professional voice. The introduction of the will was standard. Robert declared he was of sound mind, named Julian as the executor, and revoked any previous wills. I barely listened, my heart pounding. Then, Julian got to the important part. To my wife, Barbara, who accompanied me for 50 years with loyalty, sacrifice, and unconditional love, I leave the entirety of my 3 appliance stores located on the city's main avenues, valued together at $3 million. These properties are to be her complete property, free of liens, for her to manage or dispose of as she sees fit. The silence that followed was deathly. I couldn't believe what I had just heard. $3 million? The 3 stores? All for me? I looked at Julian with my eyes full of tears. He smiled warmly at me. Then I heard Kyle's voice, cold and sharp. That's ridiculous. My father-in-law clearly wasn't in his right mind when he did this. A woman her age can't manage a business of that magnitude. Julian looked at him over his glasses. Mr. Anderson made this will 4 months ago. He was evaluated by 2 independent physicians who certified his full mental capacity. This document is completely legal and valid. Kyle clenched his jaw. Brenda took off her sunglasses and looked at me with something I had never seen in her eyes. Pure hatred. And what about me, Mom? Dad didn't leave me anything? Her voice trembled with contained rage. Julian continued reading. To my daughter, Brenda, I leave the sum of $100,000 in an investment account, on the condition that she may only access these funds after 2 years, during which time I hope she will have matured and learned the value of honest work. Brenda stood up, screaming that this was a humiliation, that her father had betrayed her, that $100,000 was a pittance compared to $3 million. Kyle grabbed her by the arm and forced her to sit down, but his eyes were drilling into me with terrifying intensity. Julian closed the folder and handed me the keys to the 3 stores, along with all the legal documents. He explained that from that moment on, I was the sole owner, that I could make any decision about the businesses without consulting anyone, that the money in the company's bank accounts was also mine. I trembled holding those keys. They were heavy, cold, real. For the first time in my life, I had something that was truly mine, something no one had given me out of pity, something I had earned with 50 years of silent dedication. I left that office floating on a strange cloud. I was happy, scared, confused, all at the same time. I went down in the elevator alone because Brenda and Kyle had stayed behind to talk with Julian, probably trying to find some way to contest the will. When I reached the ground floor and walked out onto the street, I took a deep breath. The afternoon sun hit my face, and for a moment, just one moment, I felt free. I took a cab home. To my house, I thought. The house where I had lived for 43 years. During the ride, I imagined what my new life would be like. Maybe I would hire a manager for the stores. Maybe I would learn to run them myself. Maybe I would sell them and travel the world as I had always dreamed. The possibilities were endless, and for the first time, they belonged only to me. I got home and made tea. I sat in the kitchen, in the same chair where I had sat thousands of times. But everything felt different. I was different. I was no longer the invisible Barbara, the Barbara who served and kept quiet. Now I was Barbara the businesswoman, Barbara the millionaire, Barbara the master of her own destiny. I smiled, looking at my teacup. Robert had finally seen me. He had finally valued me. His last act of love had been to give me the wings he had denied me all my life. But my happiness lasted exactly 40 minutes. Because then I heard the front door slam open, furious footsteps in the hallway, and Kyle's voice shouting my name like a curse. He stormed into the kitchen like a hurricane, with Brenda trailing behind him, crying and whining. Kyle planted himself in front of me with his arms crossed and that sarcastic smirk that turned my stomach. "Barbara, we need to talk about the stores," he said with a false calm that was more terrifying than his yelling. I set my teacup on the table and looked at him firmly. "There's nothing to talk about, Kyle. The stores are mine." He let out a cruel laugh. "Come on, Barbara. You don't know the first thing about business. I've been helping Robert with those stores for the last 5 years. I know the suppliers, the employees, the numbers, everything. You barely know how to add and subtract." I felt my blood boil. Maybe I don't know about business, but I'll learn. The stores are mine, and I decide what to do with them. Brenda approached, her eyes red and swollen. "Mom, please." Dad clearly made a mistake. He wasn't well those last few months. You know that. He was confused, medicated, saying things that didn't make sense. That will doesn't reflect his true wishes. I looked at her, incredulous. My own daughter trying to manipulate me, trying to take away the only thing her father had left me. "Your father was perfectly lucid when he made that will, Brenda. 2 doctors certified it. Just accept that for once in your life, you can't have everything you want." Kyle slammed his fist on the table, making my cup jump. "Listen to me carefully, Barbara. We are going to manage those stores together, as a family, whether you like it or not. Brenda and I will take care of everything, and you'll get your cut each month. It's the fairest thing for everyone." I stood up, trembling with rage. "No way. I am the owner now, and you are not going to touch my businesses." Kyle's face transformed. The mask of friendliness fell away completely, and what I saw was a man full of greed and contempt. He got so close to me I could smell his breath. "Then pack your bags and get out of our house." His words hit me like a bucket of ice water. "Our house?" I repeated, almost voiceless. Kyle smiled maliciously. "Yes, our house. Brenda is Robert's daughter, his rightful heir. This house is hers now, which means it's mine too. And if you're not going to cooperate with us, then you have no right to live here. It's as simple as that." I looked at my daughter, searching for a sign of humanity, hoping she would defend me, that she would tell her husband he was crazy. But Brenda just stared at the floor. She said nothing. She didn't defend me. She just stood there like a coward while her husband threw me out of my own home. "You have until noon tomorrow to pack your things and get out," Kyle continued. "And you'd better not take anything that isn't yours. No jewelry, no money, nothing that belonged to Robert. Just your old clothes and your personal junk." I felt my legs tremble. "This is my house. I've lived here for 43 years. You can't just throw me out like this." Kyle laughed in my face. "Just watch us. And if you don't leave peacefully, we'll call the cops and have you dragged out. You want your neighbors to see you being hauled away like a vagrant? Because I have no problem doing it." At that moment, I heard something that froze my blood. A laugh. A quiet, almost imperceptible laugh, coming from the kitchen doorway. The three of us turned, and there was the lawyer, Julian, leaning against the doorframe with a strange smile on his face. We hadn't heard him come in. "Pardon me for interrupting this dramatic moment," Julian said in a mocking tone, "but I'm afraid there's something I forgot to mention at the reading of the will." Kyle scowled. "What are you doing here? How did you get in?" Julian held up a key. "Robert gave me a copy months ago. He asked me to come by at this exact time on the day of the will reading. He said I would probably need to be present for what came next. And boy, was he right." He walked over to the kitchen table and pulled a large envelope from his briefcase. "You see, there is a small, additional clause in the will that I chose not to read in front of everyone at the office. Robert specifically instructed me to reveal it only if a certain condition was met." Brenda approached nervously. "What condition? What are you talking about?" Julian opened the envelope with infuriating calm. "Robert told me, Julian, if my son-in-law tries to manipulate Barbara or kick her out of the house, then read Clause 7. And well, I just witnessed exactly that." Kyle turned visibly pale. "You couldn't have been listening. That's invasion of privacy. It's illegal." Julian ignored him and began to read from the document, Clause 7. The residence located at 342 Magnolia Street, known as the family residence, was acquired by Robert Anderson 38 years ago with his own funds. Said property was never put in the name of any other family member. At the time of making this will, the house is registered solely in the name of Robert Anderson and is therefore part of his estate. This property is left in its entirety to Barbara Anderson, along with all furniture, fixtures, and belongings contained within it. The silence that followed was so thick you could cut it with a knife. I didn't fully understand what I had just heard. Julian looked at me tenderly and explained it to me as if I were a child. "Barbara, this house is yours. Robert left it to you. Legally, completely yours. They are the ones who have to leave if you so choose." The words took a few seconds to sink into my brain. The house was mine? My house was really mine? Kyle lunged at Julian like a wild animal. "That's a lie. That house belongs to the family. It can't just be hers. I have rights. I've lived here for 11 years. This can't be legal." Julian calmly put the papers away. "It's completely legal. In fact, I brought a certified copy of the deed. As you can see, it's in Robert's name, and with this will, it passes directly to Barbara. You two have technically been living here as guests of Robert, and now of Barbara." Brenda began to cry hysterically. No, this can't be happening. My dad can't have done this to us. I'm his daughter, his only daughter. How could he leave everything to her and just scraps to me?" She ran to me and grabbed my arms desperately. "Mom, please, don't do this to us. We're your family. We're your blood. You can't throw us out on the street." I looked into those eyes that were once the innocent eyes of my baby. Those eyes that now only reflected greed and manipulation. 5 minutes ago, Your husband was throwing me out on the street. Brenda, 5 minutes ago you stood by while he told me I had no right to be in this house. And now you want me to have compassion? She fell to her knees in front of me in a theatrical gesture that disgusted me. Forgive me, Mom. Forgive me. It was the shock of the moment, the surprise of the will. I didn't mean it. Please, don't do this to us. Kyle approached me with a forced smile, trying to regain his composure. Barbara, let's be reasonable. We're family. It doesn't make sense to fight over this. We can reach an agreement that benefits everyone. You keep the house, we manage the stores, and everybody wins. I shook my head. There's no agreement. Nothing Robert left is yours, Kyle. And now I want you and my daughter to do exactly what you ordered me to do a moment ago. Pack your bags and get out of my house. Kyle's face twisted into a mask of pure hatred. You're going to regret this, you stupid old woman. I have much better lawyers than this incompetent fool. I'm going to prove Robert was senile, that you manipulated him in his final days, that this will is a fraud. I'm going to take everything from you, absolutely everything, and you're going to die alone and in misery, just like you deserve. Julian stepped forward. I recommend you leave right now, Kyle, before I call the police for threatening and intimidating my client. Kyle pointed his finger at me like a gun. This isn't over. I swear on my life. He grabbed Brenda by the arm and dragged her toward the door. She was crying and screaming that this was unfair, that I had betrayed her, that I was a horrible mother. Her screams echoed through the house until I finally heard the front door slam shut with a bang that shook the walls. I collapsed into the chair, trembling from head to toe. Julian sat across from me and poured me more tea with steady hands. Breathe, Barbara. The worst is over. But I knew it wasn't over. This was just the beginning. Is the house really mine? I asked in a broken voice. He nodded. Completely yours. And the stores, too. Robert was very clear in his instructions. He knew exactly what kind of person his son-in-law was. That's why he asked me to be here today. I took a sip of tea, trying to process everything. Why had Robert never told me anything? Why did he let me find out everything this way? Julian sighed. Because he knew you, Barbara. He knew that if he told you beforehand, you would have tried to convince him to be more generous with Brenda, not to leave her out. Robert wanted to protect you from yourself, from your own kindness. Hot tears rolled down my cheeks. My husband had known me better than I knew myself. He had anticipated every move, every reaction. He had protected me even after his death. And what do I do now? Julian gave my hand a gentle pat. Now, you rest. Tomorrow, we'll go to the stores so you can see the real state of the businesses. And we are also going to change all the locks on this house. Kyle is not setting foot in here again. That night, I slept in my bed for the first time in 6 months. Ever since Robert got sick, I had slept in the chair next to him, and after his death, I stayed in the guest room because our bedroom hurt too much. But that night, I returned to our marital bed. I lay on Robert's side and hugged his pillow. It still smelled like him. Thank you, my love, I whispered in the darkness. Thank you for finally seeing me. Thank you for protecting me. I closed my eyes, hoping to rest, hoping to feel peace. But sleep didn't come. My mind was spinning endlessly. Kyle's words echoed in my head over and over. You're going to regret this. I'm going to take everything. What if he was right? What if he found a way to annul the will? What if I really wasn't capable of running the businesses? At 3 a.m, I gave up. I got up and went to the kitchen to make chamomile tea. The house was silent, but it was a different kind of silence. It was no longer the comfortable silence of my home. It was a tense silence, as if the walls themselves were waiting for the next attack. I sat at the table with my steaming cup and looked around. This kitchen had been my territory for 43 years. I had prepared thousands of meals here. I had cried here in secret more times than I could count. And now it was mine, truly mine. My phone rang, startling me. Who could be calling at 3 a.m? I looked at the screen, and it was an unknown number. I hesitated before answering, but something made me swipe the green icon. Hello? The voice on the other end froze my blood. It was Brenda, but she sounded strange, distorted, as if she were crying and talking at the same time. Mom, please, you have to help me. Kyle is furious. He's destroying everything in the hotel room. He's saying horrible things. He says he's going to ruin you, that he's going to invent proof that you abused Dad, that he's going to tell everyone you're an abuser. I felt a knot in my stomach. Brenda, I never abused your father. Everyone knows how I cared for him until his last breath. She sobbed harder. I know, Mom. But Kyle knows people, dangerous people. He says he can get false witnesses, doctors who will say Dad had signs of abuse. Mom, I'm scared. I don't know what to do. For a moment, just one moment, my maternal instinct wanted to take over. I wanted to tell her to come home, that everything would be all right. But then I remembered her face when Kyle was throwing me out. I remembered her complicit silence. I remembered that she didn't say a single word in my defense. Brenda, if Kyle does something illegal, he will go to jail. I have an excellent lawyer and the truth on my side. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When she spoke again, her voice was completely different. Cold, calculating. So that's your final word, isn't it? You're going to leave us on the street with nothing. I realized it had all been an act. The tears, the fear, all fake. Brenda, your father left you $100,000. That's not nothing. And when 2 years pass, it will be yours. She laughed bitterly. $100,000. Do you know how much we owe, Mom? Do you know how much debt Kyle and I are in? More than $200,000. Credit cards, loans, everything. We thought that when Dad died, we would inherit enough to pay it all off and live well. But no, he decided to give it all to you, to the maid whose only job her entire life was scrubbing floors. Her words pierced me like knives. A maid? Is that how you see me? I'm your mother, Brenda. You're a fool who never knew how to value what she had. Dad built that empire, and you just got in the way in the kitchen. And now you have the nerve to keep it all when we're young, when we have our whole lives ahead of us. You've already lived your life. What do you need $3 million for at your age? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't my daughter. Or maybe she was, and I had been blind all these years. I'm hanging up now, Brenda. Wait. Her voice became pleading again. Mom, please, I have a proposal. Sell the stores to us. We'll give you $500,000 in cash, and we'll take over the businesses. You can live peacefully on that money for the rest of your life, and we can get out of debt. $500,000 out of $3 million. They wanted to steal more than $2 million from me? No, Brenda. The answer is no. She screamed with so much fury I had to pull the phone away from my ear. Then you face the consequences. Kyle is right. You are a miserable, selfish old woman. I wish you had died instead of Dad. I hung up. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. My own daughter had just wished me dead. My own daughter, whom I had carried in my arms, whom I had breastfed, whom I had cared for when she was sick, whom I had defended from everything and everyone. The pain in my chest was physical, as if someone were squeezing my heart in their hands. I sat there in my kitchen and cried until I had no tears left. When dawn broke, I called Julian. I told him about the late-night call, about Kyle's threats, about everything. He listened in silence, and then said in a serious voice, Barbara, I need you to come to my office today. There are things about the stores you need to know. Things Robert discovered before he died, and that explain why he made the decisions he did. My heart sped up. What things? Julian sighed. I can't tell you over the phone. Come at 10 in the morning. And, Barbara, prepare yourself, because what I'm about to show you is going to change everything you thought you knew about your family. The next few hours were torture. I bathed, got dressed, tried to eat breakfast, but the food got stuck in my throat. What could be so serious? What had Robert discovered? At 9:30, I called a cab. I didn't want to drive in my nervous state. During the ride, I stared out the window without really seeing anything. The city passed in a blur. I arrived at Julian's office 5 minutes before 10. His secretary showed me in immediately. Julian was sitting behind his desk with a grim expression. In front of him were several folders and a laptop. Sit down, Barbara, he said, motioning to the chair. I sat down, feeling my legs tremble. Julian took a deep breath before speaking. Robert came to see me 6 months ago, long before he got seriously ill. He told me he had discovered something terrible and that he needed to protect you. He opened one of the folders and pulled out several papers. Robert hired a forensic accountant to review the store's finances. Do you know why? I shook my head, unable to speak. Because he noticed irregularities. Money was missing. A lot of money. At first, he thought it was a bookkeeping error. But then he started to get suspicious. Julian turned the laptop toward me. On the screen were spreadsheets full of numbers in red. For the last 3 years, someone has been diverting money from the stores. Approximately $20,000 a month. In total, more than $700,000 stolen. My mouth went completely dry. Who? But deep down, I already knew. Julian showed me more documents. Kyle. Your son-in-law had access to the accounts because Robert had given him a manager position 5 years ago. Kyle used that access to create fake invoices, ghost suppliers, and invented expenses. All the money was funneled into offshore accounts in his name. The world tilted beneath my feet. $700,000? And Brenda? I asked in a barely audible voice. Julian nodded gravely. Robert also hired a private investigator. There is evidence that Brenda knew everything. In fact, she was the one who suggested several of the methods to hide the theft. There are emails, text messages, everything. He showed me printouts of conversations between my daughter and my son-in-law. I read the words with growing horror. The old man won't notice. He's too busy, said one of Brenda's messages. Let's keep pulling money out before he dies and we have to deal with Mom, said another. I felt the air leave my lungs. I couldn't breathe. My daughter, my own daughter, had been stealing from her father while he was building a future for her. And not only that, she had planned to keep stealing after his death. I put my hands to my face, trying to hold back the tears, but it was useless. I cried with a pain that came from the depths of my soul. Julian passed me a box of tissues and waited patiently for me to calm down. There's more, he said in a soft voice. I didn't want to hear any more. I couldn't take any more betrayals, any more daggers in my back. But Julian continued anyway. Robert also discovered that Kyle was selling store merchandise on the side. Appliances he bought with company money, but sold for cash without reporting the sales. That's more than $300,000 additional dollars in tax fraud. He showed me more documents, photographs of Kyle loading boxes into a van, receipts signed with fake names, a whole elaborate system of theft and deception. Robert was gathering evidence for months, Julian explained. He wanted to have everything perfectly documented before confronting them. But then his health declined rapidly, and he ran out of time. That's why he changed the will. Why he made sure to leave everything to you and not to them. He didn't want them to continue destroying what he had built with so much effort. I looked at all those papers scattered on the desk. Irrefutable proof of my daughter and son-in-law's betrayal. Why did Robert never tell me anything? Julian closed the laptop carefully. Because he knew you, Barbara. He knew that if you found out, you would have tried to fix things, to forgive, to give them another chance. Robert told me, quote, "My wife has a heart that is too good for her own good. That's why I need to protect her, even from herself." More tears rolled down my cheeks. My husband had carried that pain alone, that monumental disappointment. He had discovered his only daughter was a thief and couldn't tell me because he knew I would defend her. What do I do with this now? I asked, pointing to the documents. Julian leaned forward with a serious expression. That's your decision, Barbara. You have 3 options. First, you can report all of this to the IRS and the police. Kyle and Brenda would go to prison for tax fraud, theft, and embezzlement. Second, you can use this information as leverage. If they try to contest the will or cause you problems, you threaten to make all this evidence public. Third, you can forgive them and do nothing, although I would personally recommend against that option. I was silent for a long time. Part of me, the mother who still lived in some corner of my heart, wanted to find a justification for what Brenda had done. Maybe Kyle had manipulated her. Maybe she was scared. Maybe she didn't understand the magnitude of her actions. But then I remembered her words on the phone the night before. I remembered how she called me a maid, how she wished me dead. It hadn't been manipulation. It had been pure greed and genuine contempt. "I can't decide yet," I said finally. "I need time to process all of this." Julian nodded sympathetically. "Take all the time you need. In the meantime, I'll keep all the evidence in my safe. And there's something else you need to know." He opened another folder, this one with documents that looked more recent. "I've been reviewing the store's bank accounts since Robert died. In the last 2 weeks, since the funeral, Kyle has made unauthorized withdrawals totaling $85,000. My head was spinning. How is that possible? How does he still have access? Julian frowned. Robert had given him signing authority years ago. Technically, that authority was revoked upon his death, but Kyle used it before the banks updated their systems. I've already filed a formal complaint, and the banks are going to reverse those transactions, but the money has already been transferred to accounts overseas. It's going to be difficult to recover. $85,000 more. On top of the $700,000 they had already stolen. Almost $1 million in total. And they probably would have kept stealing if Robert hadn't discovered them. Rage began to replace the sadness in my chest. A cold, clear rage I had never felt before. Julian, I want to see the stores. I want to know every detail of the businesses. I want to know exactly what they did and how they did it. Julian smiled for the first time all meeting. That's exactly what I was hoping to hear. Robert left me specific instructions on how to help you take control of everything. I have here the names of the trustworthy employees, the real managers who kept the stores running while Kyle was stealing. He passed me a list with several names. These men and women are loyal, honest, and know the business better than anyone. They are going to help you. We left the office and went straight to the main store, the largest of the three. It was located on a busy commercial avenue. It was a huge space with wide windows and a sign that said Anderson Appliances in large green letters. I had never set foot inside. For all these years, Robert handled the businesses, and I stayed home. Now, crossing that threshold, I felt a mix of pride and terror. The employees looked at us with curiosity. Julian asked to speak with the manager, a man named Mark, who had been working there for 15 years. Mark was a man in his 50s, bald, with thick glasses and a kind smile. When Julian explained who I was and that I was the new owner, Mark became visibly emotional. "Mrs. Anderson, Mr. Robert spoke highly of you these last few months. He told me that if anything happened to him, I was to help you in any way you needed." I shook his hand, feeling a genuine warmth from the man. "Mark, I need you to teach me everything. I want to learn how this works." He nodded enthusiastically and began to show me every corner of the store. He explained inventories, suppliers, sales, promotions. He spoke with such passion that his energy was contagious. "Mr. Fortius, Robert was a great man," he told me at one point. "But Mr. Kyle," he paused awkwardly. "You can speak freely, Mark. I know what Kyle did." His face relaxed with relief. "Mr. Kyle was a disaster, ma'am. He treated the employees badly. He made shady deals. He was always looking for ways to skim money off the top. Many of us told Mr. Robert, but Mr. Kyle was very skilled at hiding his tracks." He showed me the office where Kyle worked. There were cardboard boxes everywhere, filled with disorganized papers. "Mr. Kyle left in a hurry after the funeral and left all this here." Julian and I began to go through those boxes. We found more evidence of Kyle's illegal activities, duplicate invoices, altered receipts, contracts with shell companies. It was like a labyrinth of corruption and deceit. "I'm going to photograph all of this," Julian said, taking out his phone. "It adds more proof to what we already have." Mark brought us coffee, and we stayed there for several hours, reviewing every document. When we left the store, it was already dark. Julian took me to dinner at a small restaurant near my house. I could barely eat. My head was full of information, numbers, plans, decisions to be made. "Barbara, I know this is overwhelming," Julian said, "but I want you to know something. Robert told me you were the strongest person he had ever met, that you had endured years of invisibility with dignity, that you had raised a difficult daughter with infinite patience, that you had kept that house running like clockwork. He believed that if anyone could pull these businesses through, it was you." His words filled me with a strange emotion. pride mixed with sadness. Robert had seen something in me that I never saw in myself. "I don't know if I can do it, Julian." He put his hand on mine. "You don't have to do it alone. You have Mark and the team of loyal employees. You have me. And above all, you have something Kyle never had: integrity." I got home exhausted, physically and emotionally. I turned on only the living room light and sat on the sofa where I had watched television with Robert so many times. The house felt huge and empty without him. I picked up my phone and looked at the screen. I had 17 missed calls from Brenda and 23 text messages. I read them one by one. The first ones were pleading, begging me to reconsider, telling me she was my only daughter and that she needed me. The next ones became more desperate, threatening. The last one said, "I'm coming to the house tomorrow to get my things. You'd better let me in, or I'm calling the police." I smiled bitterly. Let her call the police. Let her do whatever she wanted. I had the keys. I had the documents. I had the law on my side. For the first time in 71 years, I had the power. And that feeling, though new and terrifying, was also liberating. I slept badly again that night. Nightmares haunted me. I dreamed that Brenda and Kyle broke into the house and dragged me out while I screamed for help. I dreamed that a judge took the stores away from me and gave them to them. I dreamed that Robert appeared and told me he had made a mistake, that I didn't deserve any of it. I woke up at 6 in the morning, drenched in sweat, my heart racing. I made strong coffee and sat in the kitchen to think. Brenda had said she was coming today. I needed to be prepared. I called Julian at 8 in the morning. "Julian, my daughter is coming today to get her things. I don't know what to expect." He answered, his voice still sleepy but alert. "I'll be there in an hour. Don't let her in until I arrive. And, Barbara, record everything that happens with your phone. Any threats or intimidation can be used as evidence." At 9 o'clock sharp, I heard a car pull up out front. I looked through the window and saw Kyle's silver car. He and Brenda got out, but another person was with them. A large, muscular man with tattoos on his arms. My heart sped up. Who was that guy? Why had they brought him? They rang the doorbell insistently. Once, twice, 3 times. Then Kyle started pounding on the door with his fist. "Barbara, open this damn door right now." I didn't move a muscle. I took out my phone and started recording from the window. Kyle kept pounding, harder and harder. "We know you're in there. Open up, or I'll break the door down." The large man approached the door and examined it, as if calculating how much force it would take to knock it down. Brenda was crying dramatically. "Mom, please, we just want our things." "Don't be cruel." Just then, Julian's car arrived. He got out quickly and walked straight toward them with a firm stride. "Good morning. I'm Mrs. Anderson's attorney. Can I help you with something?" Kyle spun toward him, furious. "You have no business here. This is a family matter." Julian smiled with that professional calm I liked so much. "Actually, as the legal representative of the owner of this property, I have every right to be here. And you are trespassing on private property." The large man took a threatening step toward Julian. "Who's this clown?" Kyle put a hand on the guy's shoulder. "It's Miguel, my cousin. He came to help us carry things." Julian didn't flinch. "Miguel, I recommend you get back in the car. Being here, threatening and intimidating, constitutes several crimes. Do you want to go to prison for helping your cousin?" Miguel looked at Kyle, waiting for instructions. Kyle hesitated a moment and then gestured for him to back off. Julian knocked on my door gently. "Barbara, it's me. You can open up." I opened the door just a few inches, leaving the chain on. Julian slipped in quickly, and I closed it behind him. "Are you okay?" I nodded, though I was shaking. Julian looked out the window, assessing the situation. "They're going to try to get in one way or another. We need to set clear rules." He went back outside and confronted Kyle. "All right, here's what's going to happen. Barbara is willing to allow Brenda to collect her clothes and personal belongings. Only Brenda, no one else. She has 30 minutes. Everything will be supervised and recorded. If she tries to take anything that doesn't belong to her, the police will be called. Is that clear?" Kyle gritted his teeth. "I have things in there too. I lived in that house for 11 years. Julian shook his head. You were never an owner or co-owner of this home. You were a guest. You have no legal right to be here. Brenda stepped forward, wiping her tears. Mom, please let me in. I just want my clothes, my photos, my memories. I looked at this woman who was once my baby. Now she was a stranger with my daughter's face. I opened the door completely and let her pass. Kyle tried to follow her, but Julian blocked his path. Only Brenda. Kyle muttered something under his breath, but stayed outside. Brenda entered and looked around as if memorizing every detail. Julian and I followed her to what had been her room. She started pulling clothes from the closet and stuffing them into a large suitcase she had brought. Meanwhile, she kept glancing toward the dresser drawers where I knew Robert had kept some jewelry he had given her years ago. The jewelry is yours too, I said in a neutral voice. Your father gave it to you. She looked at me, surprised. Really? She opened the drawer and took out several small boxes with necklaces, earrings, and bracelets. They weren't extremely valuable pieces, maybe $20,000 in total, but they were rightfully hers. She put them in her purse with trembling hands. Julian was taking pictures of everything she took. Documentation, he had explained, in case she later claims something is missing. Brenda went to the bathroom and collected her cosmetics, her lotions, her perfumes. Then she went back to her room and started packing shoes. At one point, she sat on the bed and began to cry silently. I can't believe this is happening, she whispered. I can't believe my own mother is kicking me out like trash. I sat next to her, keeping some distance. Brenda, you were the one who chose to steal from your father. You were the one who chose a man over your family. You were the one who called me a maid and wished me dead. She raised her face and looked at me with bloodshot eyes. I was angry. People say horrible things when they're angry. I didn't mean it. I took out my phone and found the screenshots of the messages Julian had shown me. The messages where she and Kyle planned to steal more money, where they laughed at Robert, where they talked about me as an obstacle. You didn't mean this either? Brenda turned pale when she saw her own words on the screen. Where did you get that? That's private. You can't have access to my messages. Julian intervened with a cold voice. Your father hired investigators before he died. All of this is legal evidence of fraud and theft, and there's much more. Brenda stood up abruptly. You set me up. Dad set us up. I shook my head with infinite sadness. No, honey. Your father gave you opportunities. He gave you love. He gave you an education. He gave you everything you asked for. You and Kyle chose to betray him. She grabbed her suitcase violently. I'm not staying here to listen to this. I have my clothes. I'm leaving. She headed for the door but stopped in the hallway. She looked toward the master bedroom, where many of Robert's things still were. I want something of Dad's, she said in a broken voice. Something to remember him by. I hesitated for a moment. Then I went to the bedroom and took a framed photo from the drawer of Robert with Brenda when she was little. In the picture, he was holding her in his arms, and both were smiling. It was before everything got complicated, before greed and ambition ruined it all. Here, I said, handing her the frame. She took it and hugged the photograph to her chest, sobbing. For a moment, just one moment, I saw my little girl again. I saw the 5-year-old Brenda who would run to me when she fell and scraped her knees. The Brenda who told me I was the best mom in the world. But that moment passed quickly. The adult woman in front of me was no longer that girl. I don't know if she ever really had been, or if I had only been seeing what I wanted to see. We walked to the front door. Kyle was still outside, smoking a cigarette impatiently. When he saw Brenda come out with the suitcase, he threw the cigarette down and approached. Is that it? Just one suitcase? Brenda nodded without speaking. Kyle looked at me with pure hatred. This isn't over, Barbara, I promise you. Julian stepped forward. Any attempt at harassment, threats, or intimidation will be reported to the authorities immediately. And Kyle, I know about the $85,000 you stole from the accounts 2 weeks ago. That's a federal crime. Kyle's face crumpled. I don't know what you're talking about. Julian smiled. Of course you do. And I also know about the $700,000 from the last 3 years. I have all the documentation. Fake invoices, ghost suppliers, merchandise sold illegally. You want me to continue? Kyle opened his mouth to respond, but no sound came out. Miguel approached, confused. "Cousin, what's he talking about?" Brenda pulled Kyle by the arm. "Let's go. Now." They walked quickly to the car. Before getting in, Kyle yelled one last thing at me. "Enjoy your victory while you can, old woman. This is just the beginning." The car sped off with a squeal of tires and disappeared down the street. I stood there in the doorway of my house, watching them go. Julian put a hand on my shoulder. "You did the right thing, Barbara." But I didn't feel good. I felt empty, hollow, as if something essential had broken inside me. I had lost my daughter. Maybe I had lost her years ago and was only just realizing it. We went inside, and Julian locked the door. "I'm going to hire security for you." I don't like Kyle's attitude. I don't trust him not to try something desperate. I sat on the sofa, my legs trembling. "Do you think he's capable of hurting me?" Julian sat across from me with a serious expression. "I think he's a desperate man with enormous debts who just lost access to his easy money source. Desperate men do unpredictable things." Julian's words chilled me to the bone. For the next 3 days, I hired a security company that installed cameras all around the house and an alarm system connected directly to the police. I also changed all the locks. Every night, I checked 3 times that all the doors and windows were securely locked before going to bed. Fear had settled in my chest and wouldn't let me breathe easy. Julian came by every day to check on me. He also helped me understand the businesses better. We spent hours at the stores with Mark, who turned out to be a treasure trove of knowledge and loyalty. He taught me all about inventory, sales, and marketing strategies. At first, it all seemed overwhelming, but little by little, I started to understand how it worked, and to my surprise, I discovered I had an aptitude for it. The numbers made sense to me. The business strategies seemed logical. One afternoon, while we were reviewing the accounting books at the main store, Mark said something that got me thinking. "Mrs. Anderson, do you know these stores could be generating double the profits if we eliminate all the corruption Mr. Kyle installed?" I looked at him, surprised. "Double?" He nodded. "Mr. Kyle didn't just steal money. He also made deals with corrupt suppliers who sold us more expensive products in exchange for kickbacks for him. If we renegotiate those contracts and clean up the operation, we can increase profits significantly." I thought about that. My husband had built an empire, and Kyle had been bleeding it dry. How much bigger could the business have been without that constant drain? "Mark, I want you to make a list of all those corrupt suppliers. We are going to cancel every one of those contracts and find honest alternatives." His eyes lit up with enthusiasm. "That's exactly what we need to do, mister. Robert would be proud of you." That night, as I was eating dinner alone in my kitchen, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated before answering, remembering Kyle's threats. But something made me swipe the green button. "Hello?" The voice on the other end surprised me. It was a young, nervous woman. "Mrs. Anderson? My name is Karen. I work at Store 2. I need to talk to you about something very important. But I can't do it over the phone. Can we meet tomorrow?" Her urgent tone worried me. "What is it about, Karen?" There was a long pause. "It's about Mr. Kyle. He called me 2 days ago. He offered me money to do something illegal. I told him no, but I'm afraid he'll try with other employees. I need to tell you everything." My heart began to beat faster. "What did he want you to do?" Another silence. "Ma'am, please." "Not over the phone. Can you come to Store 2 tomorrow at 8 in the morning? Before it opens to the public." I agreed, although a part of me feared it was a trap. I called Julian immediately and told him about the call. He was also cautious. "I'm going with you tomorrow. Do not go alone." I barely slept that night, imagining what Kyle could want that was so serious. At 7 in the morning I was ready. Julian picked me up at 7:30. The drive to Store 2 felt endless. Karen was waiting for us at the door. She was a young woman of about 25, thin, with her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked terrified. We entered the empty store, and she took us to the small office in the back. She took out her cell phone and showed us text messages from a number she confirmed was Kyle's. I read them with growing horror. "Karen, I need your help urgently. I'll pay you $10,000 in cash if you do something for me," the message said. Karen had replied, asking what it was. Kyle's response was chilling. I need you to plant evidence that my mother-in-law is stealing money from the stores, fake invoices in her name, unauthorized withdrawals that look like she signed them. I have everything prepared, I just need you to place it in the files. I sat down, feeling like my legs wouldn't hold me. Kyle wanted to frame me, to make me look like the thief so he could take the stores away. Julian took Karen's phone and began taking screenshots of everything. What did you reply? He asked her. Karen looked on the verge of tears. I told him no, that I would never do something like that. Then he threatened me. He said if I didn't cooperate, he would have me fired and make sure I never got a job anywhere else. I got really scared. Julian kept reading the messages. This is attempted fraud, conspiracy to commit a crime, and threats. Kyle just committed several more crimes with these messages. Karen looked at us with pleading eyes. I don't know if I did the right thing by telling you, but Mr. Robert was always good to me. He gave me this job when I really needed it. And you, Mrs. Anderson, you don't deserve to be treated like this. Everyone in the stores knows Mr. Kyle was the corrupt one, not you. I hugged her, feeling immense gratitude. You did the right thing, Karen. Thank you for your honesty and your loyalty. Julian was already making calls. I'm contacting a detective I know. This needs to be investigated formally. Karen, would you be willing to give an official statement? She nodded, though she was trembling. Yes, but I'm scared of what Kyle might do to me. Julian put a hand on her shoulder gently. We will protect you. What you did was very brave. We left the store with mixed emotions. On one hand, I had more evidence against Kyle. On the other, I was terrified of how far he was willing to go to destroy me. Julian, what do we do now? He put his phone away with a determined expression. Now, we go on the offensive. Kyle made a huge mistake by involving Karen. We now have recent evidence of attempted fraud. It's time to take all of this to the authorities. We went directly to the district attorney's office. Julian had made an emergency appointment. We spent 3 hours there, presenting all the evidence. The $700,000 stolen over 3 years, the $85,000 taken after Robert's death, the illegally sold merchandise, and now the attempt to frame me with false documents. The DA, a man of about 45 named David Chen, reviewed everything with growing attention. This is more than enough to open a formal criminal investigation, he said finally. I'm going to issue arrest warrants for Kyle for tax fraud, embezzlement, theft, and conspiracy. We will also investigate the level of involvement of your daughter, Brenda. I felt a knot in my stomach hearing that. Brenda could also go to prison. Mr. Chen nodded gravely. If it's proven that she actively participated in the fraud, yes. The messages you have suggest she not only knew, but helped plan the thefts. My own daughter could end up in prison. A part of me wanted to stop all of this, to forgive, to forget. But then, I remembered her cruel words. I remembered how she wished me dead. I remembered she had stolen from her own father while he was dying. No, I was not responsible for Brenda's decisions. She had chosen this path. Now she would have to face the consequences. How long will this take? Julian asked. The DA closed the folder. We'll issue the warrants today. Kyle will likely be arrested tomorrow or the day after. Then comes the legal process, which can take several months. But with the evidence you have, a conviction is almost certain. We left that office with a heavy weight in our chests. Things were official now. There was no turning back. That afternoon, as we were driving back to my house, Julian received a call. His expression changed completely as he listened. When he hung up, he looked at me with a mix of surprise and worry. Barbara, that was the main bank where the store's accounts are. Kyle tried to make a massive withdrawal of $200,000 an hour ago. The bank stopped him because we had already put alerts on all the accounts. But this means he's desperate. He knows the walls are closing in. My blood ran cold. What is he going to do now? Julian drove faster. I don't know, but a desperate man is dangerous. I'm going to call the police and ask them to expedite the arrest warrant. I don't like this. We arrived at my house, and Julian insisted on checking the entire perimeter before letting me in. The security cameras showed nothing unusual, but I still felt watched, stalked. Julian stayed with me until late. We ordered Chinese food and ate in silence, each lost in thought. "Barbara," he said finally, "I want you to know that whatever happens, I'm going to be here supporting you. Robert asked me to protect you, and that's exactly what I'm going to do." I looked at him gratefully. This man, whom I had barely known for a few weeks, had become my only true ally. That night, after Julian left, I checked every lock 3 times. I went to bed with the phone on my nightstand and the alarm system activated. At 3 in the morning, I was jolted awake by the shrill sound of the alarm. I leaped out of bed, my heart pounding. The security lights had switched on automatically, illuminating the entire yard. I looked out my bedroom window, and what I saw left me paralyzed with terror. Kyle was there, trying to force open the kitchen window with a crowbar. His face was red with rage and frustration. I grabbed my phone with trembling hands and dialed 911. "There's someone trying to break into my house," I said in a choked voice, giving them my address. The operator told me to lock myself in a room and not come out. I ran into my bedroom's bathroom and locked the door. I could hear Kyle shouting obscenities outside. "Barbara, I know you're in there. Come out and face me like a woman. You can't hide forever." The sound of shattering glass echoed through the night. He had managed to break the kitchen window. I heard his heavy footsteps entering my house. My house, the place that was supposed to be my safe haven. "Barbara!" he yelled as he walked through the hallways. "I'm going to find you, and when I do, you're going to sign the papers I brought. You're going to transfer those stores to me right now." He sounded drunk or high, his voice distorted by desperation and madness. I clutched the phone to my chest, praying the police would arrive soon. Kyle came up the stairs. I could hear every step getting closer. "I lost everything because of you," he screamed. "I owe money to dangerous people, people who will kill me if I don't pay them. And you're just sitting there in your house with your millions while I go under." He slammed something heavy against my bedroom door. The wood cracked but held. "Open this damn door, Barbara." Panic was consuming me. What if he got in before the police arrived? What if he hurt me? What if this ended very badly? Then I heard the sirens. The blessed sound of police sirens approaching. Kyle heard them too. "Damn, old woman, this isn't over." I heard his footsteps running back down the stairs. More sounds of things breaking. Then, voices of police officers shouting, "Police! Hands up!" There was a scuffle. Shouts. More things falling. Finally, everything went silent except for the calm voices of the officers. One of them came upstairs and knocked gently on my door. "Ma'am, this is Officer Martinez. It's safe to come out now. The intruder is in custody." I opened the bathroom door, my legs shaking so badly I could barely stand. The officer was young, in his 30s, with a concerned expression. "Are you injured, ma'am?" I shook my head, unable to speak. He helped me down the stairs. The scene in the living room was devastating. Kyle was handcuffed on the floor, screaming that this was unfair, that the house should be his, that I had stolen his future. 2 officers held him down as he thrashed like a rabid animal. The kitchen was a disaster. Glass everywhere, overturned furniture, broken dishes. Another officer approached me. "Ma'am, this man has an active arrest warrant for fraud. In addition, he now faces charges for breaking and entering, destruction of property, and making threats. He'll be in custody for a long time." Kyle looked at me with bloodshot eyes. "This is your fault. It's all your fault. I hope you die alone and miserable." The officers dragged him out of the house. His screams faded as they put him in the patrol car. I collapsed onto the sofa, which was miraculously still intact. One of the officers brought me water. Paramedics arrived to check on me, even though I insisted I was fine. My blood pressure was through the roof. They recommended I go to the hospital, but I refused. I just wanted everyone to leave, to let me process what had just happened. Julian arrived half an hour later. When he was notified of what happened, he bolted from his house in his pajamas. He hugged me tight as I finally broke down and cried, "It's over, Barbara. It's over. He can't hurt you now." But I knew the damage was already done. The emotional damage, the psychological damage, the trauma of having someone violently break into your home trying to hurt you. That wasn't going to be erased easily. Julian called an emergency service to come board up the broken window. He also called a cleaning service. Within 2 hours, the house was back in order, at least physically. But I couldn't be there. I didn't feel safe. Julian took me to a nearby hotel and checked me into a suite under a fake name. "You're going to stay here for a few days while we process everything legally and make sure Kyle remains in custody." I lay in that hotel bed, staring at the ceiling. How had my life come to this? How had the family I loved turned into my worst nightmare? The next day, the DA, Mr. Chen, called me. "Mrs. Anderson, Kyle is in custody and will remain there. With last night's events, we've added multiple charges. He will not be getting bail. He is considered a danger to you." He also informed me that they had summoned Brenda for questioning. "We need to know exactly how much she knew and how much she participated in the fraud." My heart clenched. Is she going to be arrested too? There was a pause. "It depends on her statement and the evidence we find." "But ma'am, I need you to understand something. Your daughter is an adult. She made conscious decisions. If she participated in criminal activities, she must answer for them." I hung up the phone and cried for hours. My family had completely disintegrated. My husband was dead. My son-in-law was in prison. My daughter was under criminal investigation, and I was hiding in a hotel, fearing for my life. 3 days later, Julian came to the hotel with news. Brenda gave her statement to the DA. She confessed her involvement in the fraud. She claims Kyle manipulated her, that she was afraid of him, that she didn't know it was so serious. I sat up straight. Did they believe her? Julian shook his head. "The text messages we have show she was an active participant, not a victim. She's trying to reduce her liability. The DA offered her a deal. If she returns any money she can and testifies against Kyle at trial, she will receive a reduced sentence of 2 years probation instead of 5 years in prison." 2 years. My daughter could have gone to prison for 2 years. "And she accepted the deal?" Julian nodded. "Yes, she signed this morning." Also, he hesitated before continuing. "She also wants to see you. She says she needs to talk to you, to ask for your forgiveness." I felt a mix of emotions so intense it made me dizzy. Part of me wanted to see her, to hold her, to tell her everything would be okay. But another part, the part that had matured painfully in these last few weeks, knew I couldn't keep being the mother who forgives everything without consequences. "I'm not ready to see her," I said finally. Julian nodded understandingly. "It's your decision. No one can force you." The next few days passed in a haze. Julian kept me informed of everything. Kyle would be prosecuted and would likely spend between 8 and 10 years in prison for all his crimes. Brenda would serve probation, but would have a criminal record for life. The stores were being fully audited to determine the total scope of the fraud. A week later, Julian told me it was safe to go home. They had reinforced all the security measures, and Kyle remained in prison with no chance of bail. I returned to my house with mixed feelings. The repairs were perfect. There was no physical evidence of the attack, but I could feel it. I could feel the violation of my safe space. That night, sitting in my kitchen with a cup of tea, I looked around. This house had witnessed so many things. Love, laughter, family dinners, celebrations. But it had also witnessed years of invisibility, of unrecognized sacrifice, of silent betrayals. Maybe it was time to close this chapter. Maybe it was time to start something completely new. I picked up my phone and called Julian. "I want to sell this house. I can't live here anymore. There are too many ghosts." Julian wasn't surprised by my decision. "I understand completely, Barbara. It's your right to do with your property whatever you feel is best for your well-being." In the following weeks, while the house was being prepared for sale, I dedicated myself completely to the stores. Mark turned out to be much more than a simple manager. He was a business visionary. Together, we restructured the entire operation. We canceled contracts with corrupt suppliers and negotiated new deals that saved us thousands of dollars a month. We implemented digital inventory systems to prevent future theft. We trained the staff in excellent customer service. And to my surprise, I found I had a natural talent for business. The numbers fascinated me. The marketing strategies excited me. For the first time in 71 years, I felt I had a purpose beyond serving others. Profits began to climb. In just 2 months, we had increased sales by 35%. Mark looked at me with admiration. "Mrs. Anderson, you have what Mr. Robert had, vision and determination. The stores are flourishing under your leadership." His words filled me with a pride I had never experienced before. It wasn't pride in being someone's wife or someone's mother. It was pride in my own accomplishments. The house sold faster than expected. A young couple with 2 children bought it. I liked knowing that children's laughter would fill those rooms again. With the money from the sale, I bought a modern apartment on the 15th floor of a downtown building. It had huge windows overlooking the city, a designer kitchen, and most importantly, it had no history. It was a blank canvas where I could create new memories without the weight of the past. One day, while I was at the store reviewing reports, Karen approached me shyly. "Mrs. Anderson, there's someone here who wants to see you." My heart skipped a beat. "Who is it?" Karen lowered her voice. "It's your daughter, Brenda. She says it's urgent." I hadn't seen her since that day she collected her things. 3 months had passed. I hesitated for a long moment. Then I nodded. "Send her into the office." Brenda entered with faltering steps. She looked different. Thinner, paler, with deep dark circles under her eyes. She was no longer wearing expensive clothes or flashy jewelry. She wore simple jeans and a white blouse. She looked small, vulnerable, broken. "Mom," she said, her voice barely audible. I didn't respond. I just looked at her, waiting for her to speak. She sat in the chair across from my desk and began to cry silently. "I know I have no right to be here. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I needed to see you. I needed to tell you I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Mom." Tears rolled down her cheeks uncontrollably. "Kyle is blaming me for everything in his legal defense. He says I manipulated him, that it was all my idea. My own lawyers tell me I'll probably serve the full 2 years of probation. And the worst part is, I deserve it. I deserve that and more." I looked at her with a mixture of compassion and pain. This was my daughter, the child who had grown in my womb, whom I had given life to. But she was also the woman who had betrayed me in the cruelest ways. "Why did you do it, Brenda? Why did you steal from your own father?" She covered her face with her hands. "Because I never had enough. Dad gave me everything, but I always wanted more. And Kyle. Kyle made me feel like I deserved the whole world. He poisoned me against you both, especially against you. He made me believe you were the reason I wasn't happy." I took a deep breath. "Brenda, I gave you everything I had. My time, my love, my entire life. And you know what I learned? That giving everything doesn't create gratitude. It creates dependency and resentment." She lifted her face, her eyes red. "You're right. You both gave me so much that I never learned to value anything. I never learned to work for what I wanted. I never learned that actions have consequences." There was a long silence. Finally, I spoke. "Brenda, I can't forgive you right now. Maybe someday, but not now. The wound is too deep. But I don't hate you either. You're my daughter, and a part of me will always love you. However, I need you to understand something. I am not going to rescue you. I am not going to pay your debts. I am not going to hire better lawyers. I am not going to make this go away. You need to face the consequences of your decisions." She nodded through her sobs. "I know. I didn't come to ask for money or help. I just came to tell you I'm sorry and that I'm proud of you. I've heard how you've transformed the stores, how you've become a successful businesswoman. Dad was right to leave it all to you. You were the strong one. You were always the strong one, and we never saw it." Her words cut through me. I never expected to hear something like that from Brenda. "What are you going to do now?" I asked. She wiped her tears. "I got a job at a grocery store as a cashier. It's humble, but it's honest. I'm living in a small apartment with 2 roommates. For the first time in my life, I'm paying my own bills, earning my own money. And you know what, Mom? It's liberating. I don't depend on anyone anymore. I don't have to manipulate or steal. I just have to work." I was surprised to hear that. Maybe there was hope for her after all. "I'm glad to hear that, Brenda." She stood up to leave. At the door, she stopped and turned. "Mom, do you think Someday, we could have some kind of relationship? Not like before. I know that's impossible. But maybe. Something new? Something honest? I thought about it for a moment. Maybe. But it's going to take time. A lot of time. And you're going to have to show me with actions, not with words. She nodded. I will. I promise you. She left, leaving me with a whirlwind of emotions. That night, in my new apartment, I sat in front of the huge windows, looking at the city lights. My phone vibrated. It was a text from Julian. How did it go with Brenda? I replied, difficult, but necessary. I think she's finally growing up. The months continued to pass. Kyle's trial was quick. With all the evidence against him, he pleaded guilty to get a reduced sentence, 8 years in federal prison. Brenda fulfilled her part of the deal by testifying against him. The relationship between them was destroyed forever. I heard he cursed her in court, calling her a traitor. I continued to build my new life. I hired more trustworthy staff. I opened a 4th store in an up-and-coming commercial district. The profits multiplied. I became known in business circles as the widow who turned a legacy into an empire. I was invited to give talks at women's entrepreneurship events. I, who had never formally worked a day in my life, was now inspiring other women. On the 1st anniversary of Robert's death, I went to his grave alone. I brought his favorite flowers, yellow carnations. I sat on the grass next to his headstone and talked to him as if he could hear me. Robert, I did it. I took what you left me, and I made it grow. I transformed the stores into something even bigger than you imagined. But more importantly, I transformed myself. I found my voice, I found my strength, I found the Barbara who was hidden for 50 years. Tears rolled down my cheeks, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of gratitude and liberation. Thank you for seeing me at the end. Thank you for protecting me even after death. Thank you for giving me the chance to discover who I really am. I stayed there until the sun began to set. Then I stood up, brushed the grass off my skirt, and walked to my car with my head held high. Brenda and I started to see each other occasionally for coffee. Short, careful conversations where we were both learning to know each other as two adults, not as a codependent mother and daughter. She kept working, paying her debts, building an honest life. I watched her with a mixture of pain for what was lost and hope for what could be. A year and a half after the will reading, I received a letter at my office. It was from Kyle, from prison. I hesitated before opening it. Finally, I tore the envelope. The letter read, Barbara, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I destroyed your family, betrayed your trust, and tried to steal everything from you. I'm in here paying for my crimes, and I have a lot of time to think about everything I did wrong. I just want you to know that I always knew you were stronger than you looked. That's why I was afraid of you. That's why I wanted to control you. Because I knew that if you ever woke up to your true power, I would be left looking like a fool. And that's exactly what happened. I read the letter twice, then I tore it up and threw it in the trash. I didn't need his recognition or his apologies. I didn't need him for anything. I looked around my elegant office, the walls decorated with business awards, the imported mahogany desk, the spectacular view of the city. I had built all of this with my intelligence, my work, my determination. And you? Have you ever experienced an injustice like this? Have you had to rebuild yourself from scratch? Tell me your story in the comments. Because if I could do it at 71 years old, after half a century of invisibility, you can too. It's never too late to discover your power. It's never too late to become who you really are.